Villagaia sessions number 3.
Yeah.
This time again in a new location. Thanks so much, by the way, for I think 2-3 hours of setup of this room. But now we can settle in here. But I really appreciate all the work you're doing to make this look beautiful.
Without the amazing team, we wouldn't be able to make it. And the producers behind, I hope we are gonna have session number 4, 5 until 10 at least in this setup.
Yeah, so I was thinking today that we would continue the conversation where we left off yesterday, but also weaving in the 2 amazing hours of deep dialogue that we had yesterday. I'm amazed that having looked through all of your Canva research work, diagrams of how many years of research is it?
Almost 18.
18. Wow.
Yeah. Started very early. I mean, my actually initial research is on finance and economic systems. Like I was 13, and because my family had a massive financial loss um, during one the 9/11. During the 9/11, the few days afterward, they had some investments in the U.S. Stock market and so on, and so by having decently wealth in a way in the family, to all of a sudden having a sudden abrupt, and they got, I mean, badly followed by wealth managers. They weren't cared. The high risk investment things they obviously didn't understand. So I was very young when that happened. All of a sudden, I wanted to learn more about economics and figuring out why things went the way it went. So yeah, it has been a while.
Nice. So it's great. So 18 years of your research, it's starting 18 years, starting to come of age, become an adult. So it's a good time for it to go out into the world and maybe start finding its own legs, right? So you don't have to be the one that's always supporting it.
Oh yeah, that's definitely yeah, absolutely. Having the freedom to be able to keep focusing on things without having to be in a way that also running the shows. Yeah, absolutely. Prefer to be on the engineering part.
Really, you prefer to be on the tech
Research,
side.
yeah,
Really?
research, tech.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
by far, by far. Um, yeah. Also because in a way, in what we are doing, the main language is English, and for me, it's not even native. So if you want people to share things, I mean, probably it's better people that are native at least. Is, they have more fluency. They play with the words better. But
Ah, who knows? Native, not native. I started learning English properly when I was 9, and
wow,
Joseph Conrad, one of the big English language writers, was Polish too. So I think it's more about where you find your joy. And if you find your joy in something, it doesn't matter whether you're native or not. You'll find the communication. It's actually kind of really interesting because we are, I think, maybe kind of crossing paths in our journey because I started in tech, software development, and I've been going more and more. And now, as I look at these spaces and ideas that we're looking at, I'm like, get me to the fundraising. That's where the fun stuff is. That's what actually makes things happen. Get me in front of the people with the money and let's get some money into our ecosystem here.
much needed, much needed. Yeah, that's also part of the conversations we were having in the past days and in general for the past 1 year with so many organizations about the resources and can you have an impact and also giving returns to investors. And of course, there are many different perspectives on this one, but it's definitely a hot and important topic.
Yeah.
So yeah, having fun with the funds.
Fun with the funds. So yeah, so where I see the convergence of ideas and the narrative, which I hope we can build together, which will both create exponential change in the economy, society, planet, as well as create the potential for massive wealth. Because whenever there is exponential change, there is potential for massive wealth. massive disruption and such as well, but potential for massive wealth. I see the coming together of Web3 technologies, blockchain, crypto, and especially the next evolution, blockchain-based organizations, evolution of DAOs and such, coming together with AI, specifically AI agents. So not the AI, which is a passive thing supporting you, which is absolutely incredible, but the AI that's working and actively suggesting how you can collaborate and work better together with widely understood, and it's just a mark. There's many ideas there, but let's say the regenerative mindset, regenerative culture, regenerative vision. So I see only when we have the confluence and those three things well integrated is when the potential for this huge change comes about. We've seen, I think it's becoming clear to more and more people that technology by itself, crypto is a great example of that. There's incredible potential. I am a long-term crypto maximalist. It will be all blockchain eventually. However, eventually can be a long time away. Uh, and so far, what I've seen, even though there has been great wealth, has been hugely underwhelming. And that to me is a sign of a great example of technology by itself does not create massive change.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you. And we invested. So we launched Futura as a impact venture builder in 2017, and we invested in over 20 protocols over the time. And yeah, I mean, of course, we believed in the promises of parallel economic systems, bypassing all the financial shebang that all the in a way regulators have when it comes to supporting innovation directly. Because doing crowd equity is not easy. Like you need costly licenses, you need to have all sorts of things that hinder, in a way, the simply giving resources, having communities investing directly in innovation. And in the current system, in the standard financial system, you have this overlay of regulations, processes, which on one side, of course, they claim to be for the sake and the protection of the consumer, the retail investors. On the other side, for people like me that come from that industry, 11 years in the financial world, you see that actually probably the reason is more to keep the existing players playing and increasing the challenges in the entry barrier for new players. Because the point is simple, you don't want a private investor to invest $500 in something disruptive and innovative, because you say, yeah, you need to have the, of course, the KYC, the AML, AML, and that part is understandable, but then you need to have the risk profile. Okay, but how about going into I don't know, a Prada shop? I can go and buy 500 euros of shoes, and nobody will ask my risk profile. So I can spend it, but I cannot invest it. And you say, yeah, but investment carries risks. Yeah, but still you have potential returns. When you spend it on product, it's 100% gone. So to me, the risk profile thing was a bit weird when it came to smaller quantums. And but anyway, I believe that's well on the crypto space for that. And I think the concept of Web 4 and Web 5 comes interesting. I don't know if you came
Really?
across.
I haven't come
Yeah,
across.
yeah. So basically, there are these differences. The two was centralized cloud computing. These tech giants. Three is decentralized. But then 4 and 5 is where you go into distributed, but also where the technologies become when everything blends to be infrastructure at the service of communities and humanity. So you stop having these giants like the Ethereum separate from Bitcoin, separate from coin market cap, and so on, and things start to blend further and further. Of course, at the service of humanity. It's more solar punk feeling, but the official description is that.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, maybe what we're talking about here is Web 4, Web 5, or Web X, like
Elon Musk popping up. No, that's mine.
has he trademarked X? I hope not.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
X as just you
I don't
cannot
know.
use the letter. It's out of the
Okay,
alphabet.
oh, I hope no. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where I think let's connect with the AI thing. Maybe will come to last, but we've discussed technology by itself being limited, and I don't think it's just that. Uh, I don't think it's just the only problem with crypto is that regulation has prevented it. I think there has been dearth of a dearth of solutions, and the problem space being examined is very small.
Yeah.
Right? It's inevitable that all of us know our problems, maybe a little bit problems of our family and our friends, and we talk about the problems of people quite different from us in other countries, in other wealth brackets, and so on and so forth. But most of us don't really understand them. And that's just how it is. And I come from tech. It's actually interesting. One of my university friends was Vitalik's thesis supervisor. So he's a professor now. So I remember sitting around these crypto conversations in the early 90s, right? Before all of this. And it's, we're mostly men, mostly white. We're definitely of a certain economic bracket. And the problems that we have are the problems that we have. But I think the huge potential is to all of the most of the problems are outside of our domain, right? And I'm, for example, and again, I don't know much or anything about it, but I want to learn and work with the people who do know. I'm really interested how we can build solutions for the bottom 1 billion who are living in precarity. Most of them are not in regular employment in jobs. They are micro nano entrepreneurs, right? If you're living in the ghetto, you have to hustle. People do all kinds of things. If we could create systems to support their entrepreneurship, and that's all unregulated, nobody who is living in the ghetto starts a company, a limited liability company,
Yeah.
to support. It's just not in their reality. So they work on oral contracts, they work on relationships. But I'm really curious how we could build solutions which support them.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge opportunity to do things there which will not touch regulation. And if you get the bottom 1 billion people to all make $1 more a day, that would still not even register much on the global scale of the economy, but it would have a massive human well-being impact.
And I also really liked what you said about the green jobs in a way. So how can you also help people in having jobs that do not only help in a way the financial and the wealth of their families, but also improving the planet around themselves, and especially in communities that are underserved and underprivileged, there is so much that can be done to improve the quality of life and elevating the community and the health of the people and the health of the soil and the ecosystem around them. Uh,
Health,
yeah,
learning,
yeah,
well-being. Yeah, I mean, and for me, having been around around tech for 35 years, around the regenerative space for 6, 7 years, to me, it's clear that this new paradigm will succeed at the point where we are going to be able to generate livelihoods, jobs, and more than jobs, livelihoods for billions of people. And at that point, the legacy systems will just naturally fade away. But we need to really think and focus rather than trying to fight regulation and so on and so forth. Focus on creating jobs which are planet positive, livelihoods, micro business opportunities, nano business opportunities. Yeah, that's where the path is, and that's where the regenerative mindset. There's the one side. First of all, looking from the regenerative mindset, looking ecosystemically, looking at problems of people very different than ourselves, And okay, we're here, white men, privilege, we acknowledge all of that.
Yeah.
But we have this privilege, we have this knowledge and this access to these tools. How can we come in contact and work with the people who do understand that problem space and develop the tools? There's 6-7 billion smartphones,
Yeah.
on Earth now. They are very widely spread, even amongst the most financially disadvantaged. How do we create tech solutions which support their daily needs? So that's one part of the regenerative mindset that I think is really critical. And the other one is I really see, so if you look at the history of collaboration, right? We started with, well, let's say language, somewhere 30, 50. We don't know language. We had words. We started speaking. It enabled us to collaborate much more. Then we went to the written word that again really changed the paradigm. About, was it 200, 250 years ago, we developed companies and this whole structure. And yes, they all came with a whole bunch of problems, as does everything, but it's also been a really incredible and powerful collaboration paradigm, which enabled us to create the economy and everything that we have around us. The next step of evolution, I believe we are going to move into much richer and much more diverse forms of collaboration structures. We're already seeing this, right? Most businesses don't do everything themselves. They'll have an outside accountant, outside advertising company. So actually, most businesses are already kind of becoming clouds of collaborating organizations. I think with the right technological support, this will move much further. Remote work is also a huge enabler for that, because if I'm sitting in an office, okay, I work on my company. If I take a call or if I'm starting working, it feels strange, right? But if I'm working from home, and let's say you're my friend and you say, like, oh, Victor, you know about this, do you have an hour for me? I'm trying to start a business. I'm like, yeah, of course, you're my friend, I'll help you, it's easy. So it becomes very natural for all of us to be, even if you're not starting a company yourself, you'll help your friend or a family member,
Yeah.
right? As it
Absolutely.
was actually in the old traditional tribal
Yeah.
community ways. Everybody helped each other. Everybody in the community knew who was good at that. But then we need the collaboration form,
And infrastructure.
the collaboration infrastructure to support that. Because, okay, you're my friend, I'll help you, I'll have an hour for you, 2 hours, maybe even 5 hours. But when you ask me, like, oh, this, I'm starting a new business, I don't have money, can you give me 10, 20, 30 hours? I'm kind of like,
Yeah.
I like you, but that's starting to be a lot. But if you could easily give me some shares or some claim on your
Yes.
business that you're developing, then it doesn't feel like volunteering. And it's like, yeah, I'd give you much more.
And absolutely, and that's precisely the focus that on the things that we've been discussing, and with the dozens of organizations that we're talking with. So how do we create? It's what we're calling ICCT, so information, communication, and coordination technologies. And if you can elevate these three aspects, the changes at scale are monumental. Because we see already that information alone is being challenging to see what's information, what is misinformation, what is something that we can rely on. And now with more automation and AI, even seeing what's real information and what's not is becoming more challenging. Then you have communication technologies. Is WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, are they the best tools that we can have for complex collaboration? And of course, the answer is no. They were designed for quick collaboration. And they were all born, aside for Discord, but they were all born for one-to-one conversation. And then the group part expanded. And Discord is a bit better on that, but still um, it was around gaming, not necessarily research, R&D, deep tech, where you have a more degree of complexity, more sub categories, and then coordination technologies. That one is probably the most challenging at the moment because from governance models to decision making, nothing that we have developed as civilization really works well at scale. And we see the challenges with democracies as well. But that's where, to the point also of what you were saying at the bottom, 1 billion, where agents, AI agents can make the difference because you can finally create true representative models, governance models where everyone is represented, especially if each person has his own AI, has his own agent, and the agent participates to this the decision making system. And the beauty of having virtual agents is that they don't have vested interests, they don't have desires, they don't have
It depends on how they're built, right?
yeah, yeah,
Because they
depends on
could
their
have
build.
biases depending on what they're fed.
Yeah,
They could have biases as well.
yeah. And but the beauty is with the open source and transparent code, you will be able to see it. And in a way, biases, if they're truly representative of the person, well, then it's fine. If
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
there is no such thing as unbiased. I just
yeah,
want it to be biased in a
yeah,
way
yeah,
which
yeah,
is good for me and good for the planet,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
Which is
coherent with
pro-social, right? We
yeah,
want pro-social biases, not anti-social biases.
yes. And but one question for the listeners today: which points would you like to focus, and which one do you think would be a great takeaway for the listeners? Because of course, in the past days we have been covering lots of grounds on collaboration, coordination, bridging different industries. Which one do you think would be the most interesting takeaway for today?
So for me, I really think it's to start looking at the convergence of these three things. So we have the easy to understand Web3 tech, though the next stage we can talk about that. Then the regenerative mindset, which means a different consciousness, a different a shared purpose of let's not destroy this planet, right? Let's create a more beautiful future. And what is better and more beautiful is up for conversation,
Yeah.
but at least let's engage in that conversation and believe that we can do better and then, be open to that conversation. So it's this combination of technology, a new mindset, new consciousness, new sense of connection to the natural environment and to the future. Seven generation thinking, being conscious of legacy. I think probably most people that listen are aware of like how our sense of time is going,
Yeah.
right? And investment decisions are made on quarterly level, etc. Whilst in many previous societies, people looked seven generations, built pyramids because they wanted their legacy to last 1,000 years.
Yeah, or roads, infrastructure that could last
Or
centuries.
roads,
Yeah,
or cathedrals, right? I spent a bit of time. I don't know if you've looked at the cathedral building. It's really interesting. The cathedral building period in Europe, which was in the 11th to 12th, 13th century, also known as the Dark Ages. That's when most of the big cathedrals were built, or at least started. It was also, curiously, a big rise in Europe of the cult of Mary, the feminine goddess within Christianity. So I'm not a philosopher, but it's curious that there is this confluence of the feminine and the feminine spiritual energy and the sense of, I mean, none of those cathedrals were built within one generations. The ones that
oh
went
yeah,
up fast, it was 150 years, right? The ones that took long, some of them took 300-400 years. But yet there was this mindset and this sense of, yes, it makes sense to work. How do we regain that sense and combine that consciousness with a new with the new collaboration technologies? And the technologies by themselves won't work because we need new mindsets and new, what one of my favorite philosophers, John Vervaeke, calls psychotechnologies, right? So we need the new mindsets, the new technologies to support the new mindsets, and then the AI to help us actually make it happen. So that's where the future is, the confluence of
yeah,
those three things. And neither of the movements by themselves will be able to really go very far
yeah.
and to really create the next generation paradigm in society.
I second that, and of course, that's back to the challenge of collaboration and coordination. coordination? How can you start blending these fields, industries, technologies, and also infusing principles and values so that technologies are not going to be abused? Because that's another thing that we've seen. It doesn't matter how many technologies we develop as a species. If there are no guidelines and safeguards, those technologies will be utilized for good, but consistently they will also be utilized for bad. And the more powerful the technology is, the more the potential damage is as well for the civilization. But I am optimistic. I might not sound as such in many of our conversations, but no, I'm very optimistic. We can make it.
Yeah. So maybe let's bring ourselves down to earth and start exchanging some ideas of how we're going to make it.
Let's dive into it. So, we have been studying collaboration and coordination for the past 8 years. We started releasing as well papers and first couple of chapters on a book about telodiversity. And telodiversity is a word that we have created because we didn't find it in any modern alphabet about the concept of difference in purpose, intentionality, competence, and capacities of each human being. So we know that there is neurodiversity, but how about our intention diversity? So telos from Greek means will, willpower, purpose, and then diversity. To analyze collaboration from different angles, from neuropsychology to then into technologies as well. And that's where the line between collaboration and coordination uh, it's essential because even if you have at the moment today 1,000 people, and we know that in our space there are thousands of people that want to collaborate, they want to do good, their mission aligned, their purpose aligned, they have resources,
Millions by now. If
millions,
you look
yeah,
around the world,
absolutely,
there's millions.
absolutely,
Maybe
millions,
not, I don't know, hundreds, but there's definitely millions.
huge amount. I mean, even if it was 1% of the human population, we would still be talking about what 80 million people, which is massive. The problem, of course, is that we don't know about each other. We know in a way they exist, but where? What are the names? Where they are operating? And then,
It's funny for the my wife's also got amazing projects, and for the last 10 years, our shared code word was find the others.
hmm,
And I think a lot of us has
absolutely,
been on this quest. I feel really privileged sitting here with you. I feel like I have found,
likewise,
but
likewise.
yes, so many people are still feel alone, and they're very much trying to find the others.
Yeah, and actually, and I would say with the people here in the villa as well, and with the gathering that you have created, I think all of us we are finding each other, and this is escalating because the more we find each other, the more we bring other people within, and this can rapidly bring thousands, hundreds of thousands of people together. But of course, what we are missing are technologies for the coordination part. So even if there is, let's say, 10,000 people aligned in purpose, vision, and mission, how do we coordinate each other? Because if we're not, we fall into self-organization. And self-organization always comes with key patterns of inefficiencies like operating in silos. I make a mistake, nobody knows. Someone else is making the same mistake and is paying the price for it. And resources are wasted. Then you have reinventing the wheel, which might take decades. Maybe there are three platforms right now that will need to merge together and blend rather than trying to invest and develop the same thing in parallel, but they don't know about each other. Um, and so there are meta mapping organization as well that are coming into the space, but even that one is still early stage, and we can accelerate these, of course, these all these organizations, but then technologies as well, and that's where AI becomes key because then you can have algorithms and automation in even developing the bridges, the synapses in a way of this large mycelium network type of infrastructure. And that's precisely, of course, what we're building, as you know, as we know here at the villa. And I would say that probably within a couple of months we will have the first alpha up and running. So even for the listeners as well, by the time they listen it, they might already be able to test it out, either in the alpha or in the beta. And of course, then this infrastructure being open source will take their own life. At the moment, we are all being steward. Then what will happen? We don't know.
Beautiful. Yeah. So, in terms of what we can do together, we can do some. Become a huge fan of this idea of build in public,
Yeah,
which is exactly surfacing, and this
we
is
are
why
doing it here.
this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
why we're doing
exactly.
this here.
Yeah,
We could have just had this conversation around the table, but we share it, and
yeah,
even if a few people listen to it, it gets the word out there. So I think build in public is huge, and for all of their flaws, it's still incredible that we have access to the social networks, which enable
yes,
us to
yeah,
publish what we're doing. But it must come with a new culture, right? Because if it's we're just publishing advertising style clips,
yes,
then okay, we're just okay, advertising. It's nice. And that's where building public, sharing your journey, including the tough things, including difficulties, including your failures,
yeah,
especially your failures,
yes,
is really important. So that's where the I see, it's this building the mindset, building a new culture of collaboration together with the new tools
yeah.
that's needed.
Yeah, the protocols, the processes. Also, we were talking yesterday about the concept of DAOs as well. So, how can you create organizations that, by design, can operate in a large shared environment? And how can you create new cooperatives in a way? And having all of these simplified, templatized, having models that are plug and play, having operative systems to run these DAOs and cooperatives, and basically to the point of collaboration, how can we extremely simplify? And then coordination, of course, that's where AI algorithms comes into
Exactly.
the
And
picture.
and I think the only answer to how can we extremely simplify it is AI, right? My dream I've had for over 10 years, a dream of the AI agent team coach, right? So we can give every team a team coach that's at the level of a high level professional, which right now, not even in big corporations, maybe
Hmm.
some executive teams have a full time coach or something, but it's not available. But with AI, it's possible. And then this coach, being part of many, many teams, can learn and improve. And that's where I imagine I see the real exponential acceleration of our ability to collaborate will come.
Absolutely. And also, in a way, you can invert the trend that so far, even in corporates, we had, which was about coaching, yes, by individuals, in many cases for high performance, but not necessarily high and radical collaboration. I mean, still, in many companies, competition is rewarded. And, there is one position of a CEO, there is one position for this, one position for that, rather than having a circle position where you have six people running that specific chair or
Yeah,
department.
it's very interesting. Are you familiar with spiral dynamics? And there's like all of these structure levels, and then people say that corporations, mechanistic, they're orange and such. But whilst I haven't worked big corporate myself, I have enough friends that have worked big corporate. And the funny thing is that yes, up to a certain level, it's kind of mechanistic, merit oriented, but past a certain level, it's fully tribal.
Yeah.
It's just warfare, and people will stick a knife in your back. And I've heard stories which I will not repeat. And I
Yeah.
actually have some friends who are like, I'm a really good technical, and I'm not interested in going to vice
Yeah.
president level because it's bloody over there. And that's not who I am. I'm happy at my level, one step below that. I do my job, I do well, right?
Absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest lies of our time, at least in Western society, is the concept of meritocracy. In a way that true meritocracy exists. But no, it doesn't. There's a beautiful book and the research behind from Brian Klaas, professor at I think he's at UCLA. The book is uh, Corruptible, which basically describes how it in every organization, political system, party, and so on, you always end up with the worst people in position of power because they are the only one willing to basically push anyone else down, backstab, go through all the way through all the cunning methods in order to get in position of power. While many people like us, maybe that we are more more empathetic, collaborative, altruistic, we wouldn't want to go into that
Yeah,
space.
we've created, we're living in a society where only people of a certain personality, management, leadership pattern get ahead. In the last few days, we were talking about light sensitive and other things, and I mentioned highly sensitive people, highly sensitive person. You feel
I
free to
got
put up your
my
lines. And it's interesting because when I first heard about it, I was like, oh my God, I understand myself. And okay, you say highly sensitive, sensitive to light, noise, okay, obvious. But then this like small talk. And I was like, yes, me, I hate small talk. I was like, wow, it's a thing. Now I understand. And then what's connecting with what you were just saying now, I have a friend who's a psychologist. He was also a great leader for many years in corporate, and we're talking about the leadership style of highly sensitive people. Because actually, highly sensitive people don't like being at the forefront and all of this, yet they feel into the group, and they when there is a need, they're like, okay, nobody else is stepping up. Okay, I'll step up to be a leader. But our leadership patterns and proclivities are very different. And we certainly have a huge value, but the current model is not one that
Yeah.
really supports this kind of leadership style.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then on top of it, and this one is even more niche and more nuanced, is the fact that there is a cognitive capacity and limitation in any of us. So as much as we think we can be great leaders, well, it's fine if you're managing something that has maybe few dozens variables or maybe few hundred variables. But for the complexity that we're talking about here, maybe in Web 4, Web 5, in societies that are operating more in symbiosis, well, you're talking about millions of moving pieces on a daily basis, and not a single brain can process it all. And that's where, again, algorithms can play a massive difference here in simplifying, synthesizing, automating, accelerating decision making in a way that the human leader or leaders are not the bottleneck. Uh, in a way, they can influence the algorithms, they can help architecting the mass set plans and the North Star. And even that, slowly, you will go from convergent to decentralized, and then when technologies will allow distributed, so where actually every single node or component of the system is a key component, like in the brain structure, or in a forest, or in a mycelium network. And this passage, this rapid flow will probably, it can even happen in the next few months, at least in the developments that we're doing. Because at the beginning, you have a few developers working on this infrastructure, developing the protocols. Then you open it up to a few organizations that test it out, improve it. But then when that testing part is finished, you go fully distributed, and then intelligence and decision making becomes an emergent process. It's not a direct decision making. It's an outcome of the system. But of course, this one is a big long rabbit hole.
Yeah. I think what I definitely want to throw in there because I think it's a part of the idea space which I'm holding. Because the narrative that I hear you talking about this and distributed and bigger, to me, it sounds like more bigger groups of people, which is definitely one aspect. You know, we need global scale, coordination, and civilization. That's one aspect of it. But to me, it's clear that most human work happens within small groups. 3 to 7 people is the reality where we spend most of our time
Yeah.
living in. And this is something which I think the crypto world and hasn't addressed now at all. And I am also really excited about tools and technologies that enables those day-to-day small collaborations, family size, team
Yeah.
size, to work together more effectively. And uh, I actually think, when you say node in these big systems, I think really those nodes often in many configurations, the node is a team. And it's a team of people that know each other, have deep relationships, and work together for a long time. It's actually a fact of the matter that
Yeah.
many times when you found a good team, you don't want to quit. I've seen multiple situations where there's a great team fold, the product went bad, they went on to do something else, or the company even went bad. And I know that the company is still running. They went like, we really like working together. Okay, this company failed, let's start our own company.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in a way that's, and I think this is key also for the conversation about collaboration, because what we're seeing, especially in the past couple of years, after, in a way, the COVID situation started to fade, that more physical events came back, more networking and so on. And I see organization going, the leads of the organization going burnout and having to manage the follow-ups with 100 people because they've been networking for the past like 2 years like crazy. And of course they can't. And back to the cognitive capacity, we cannot handle 50 relationships at the same time. Um, we will go burnout. That's
Not deep, right? There's
not
just not enough hours in a day.
no, exactly, exactly. And even the memory that we have, I mean, we didn't evolve as a species to handle so many relationships all at once. Even when we went hunting, I mean, we weren't 150 people. Maybe we were groups of 5, 10 people. Um, so it goes beyond our cognitive capacity and also the ability to create trust, the bonding part. And we know how important is the role of trust as well. And then, of course, keep having the time to develop yourself in the process. Because if you're burning out just to follow up with everyone, well, are you focusing also on yourself, on your energy, on your
And if you
consciousness?
only have shallow
Oh, yeah.
relationships, it doesn't enable you to
Yeah.
develop. So that's why I'm really excited in this work that we do, how to create technology and AI that enables deep collaborations to become deeper,
Yeah.
to form, and that we can work together in a deeper, more meaningful way. There's so many different trends and threads that are coming into this, but the one around belonging, right? We have lost so many of the forms of belonging in our lives. We've lost the belonging to tribe, to
Yeah.
neighborhood, to church, to community. People used to spend most of their life or decades working for one company. They had belonging to a company, which maybe was a fake simulation of real belonging of community tribe, but it was there. And for many people, their employment was their group of belonging. I think we've gone as far as we can in terms of atomizing people. We need to bring people back. And this is a key idea in me. If we create this ecosystem of structures where you can work on many different projects along your career, maybe for different companies and organizations, but still be part of the same team on these different projects, I think they'll create much more happiness for the people working and much better outcomes, right? It's really
Yeah.
interesting that when we think of a startup or company, we need to get people. But actually, when you're building a company, you need people, you need teams. You need a marketing team,
Yeah.
a development team, a HR, right? A company is not made up of people fundamentally, it's made of teams collaborating together. So if we can create the structures, the culture, the technologies which support us coming together and a project being created by highly functioning teams coming together, we can get much better results in terms of business, money,
Happiness.
and much better results in terms of happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there are two concepts that are very interesting that are emerging, especially in the past year. One is the concept of bioregionalism. So starting to look at macro areas and then smaller areas that are physical in a way. That there is the physicality and the proximity aspect of it, but they're also in a way all interconnected with each other. And then the concept of network states. And of course, the technologies and infrastructure that we have been altogether looking at, in a way, overlay this concept of network states. So, economic structures, companies that are at the service of the community, where the community owns the company and the infrastructure itself, and everything is for the benefit of the collective well-being. Um, and also a concept that we're talking in the past few days about venture builders and venture studios. So how can you have network venture studio or venture builders where you have teams that help building up a project and then they leave it to the founders, to other stewards, and also as we know, there are different phases of technology and innovation. So you will have a set of people that is very good for the startup phase, but that group might not grow quickly enough to manage, for example, $100 million company, which goes into another set of challenges and complexities. So rather than demanding each team to go through this rapid growth, you can have different structures, different groups that come in at different phases of the organization, and then they let it to other people to run. So there's so much that we can innovate. Of course, I would say the challenge, and maybe for some of the people listening as well, that they might have had in these new concepts of innovation and structures, is the fundraising part. So, how do you bring resources into these? And can you talk to investors in a way that they don't feel that they're investing in something too risky? Because innovation also comes with the perception of risk. Now, whether that risk is true or not, of course, it depends on case by case, but the perception is there. If it has not been done before, people would say, why should I invest in this and not the standard one? Why should I take the risk?
Yeah. So there's so many things there that I want to connect with. I'll start with one which I'm holding from the start of this thread, which I really want to mention because over the last year, as I did the Gathering of Tribes, I've had hundreds of conversations with different change makers, and oftentimes this question around what is regeneration and such came up. And very hard. I will not try and unpack it, but what I think is really important to be aware of and keep in mind is that whatever regeneration is, it's something that touches at all levels, from the team to the ecosystem to the network state to inner development to your spiritual development. And it's kind of, you can think of it as levels, but then when you think about it, it connects to the macro, right? Because as you go deeper into your, you need to go deeper into your spiritual development, into your connection to the earth biosphere, to the purpose and the higher meaning. And it's only through that that you are able to connect to the global thing. So it's this circular, and it's really challenging because it touches all levels, but it's also really amazing. And that's where this next leveling of human society, of human consciousness comes from, because we move at all of these levels. And it's not enough to just create better teams or meditate and have your personal deeper connection or create global networks. It's all of those things. So I think that's I wanted to bring that in because it's we need to keep that in the back of the mind, and that's why it's always yes, it's the teams and the collectives and all of those things. When you said you started talking about the venture studios and venture building and how do we connect with financing, I think that that's the part that I am really excited about now. I love the new development of venture studios because it's a new form of how we build businesses.
Yeah.
And for sure, there's probably one of the things which is most toxic and toughest and confuses us the most in the world of business is survivor bias. Because we look at the Steve Jobs, the Sergey Brin, the Bill Gates, right, which took a company from the garage to the multi-billion international conglomerate and went through all of that journey. And the fact of the matter is exactly like you say, very, very few people are good at all of those stages. And it's okay. And it doesn't make sense. And that's why we need these more flexible things where people can focus on the part of the journey where they are great at. And it's a natural thing. And it should be a natural thing. I got the business to this level, and this is the thing. And actually, many entrepreneurs realize that. But it's still not there in the culture.
Not yet, but
So
it's accelerating. It's accelerating.
it's accelerating. I think from venture studios, I really see as we build out this consciousness and the technology supporting it, these new mindsets of collaboration, we will see a Cambrian explosion of organizational forms. And in terms of investment, I think what's the easiest in terms of being a natural step from where we are at now is to look at building portfolio investments or funds, but ones which don't just distribute money, but also build the ecosystem of collaboration. So I've come across this, some of my friends are working on the idea of venture cooperatives. So from a venture studio is kind of top down. It's a machine that creates companies, which is great. It's useful, but can we do it as a circle or more bottom up? And I am personally really interested in, I'm started working on this idea of venture families. And I really think creating the human support structures between organizations will really level up their performance, their ability to succeed. Going along with that is ergodic investing from Evolut 6 and these kinds of things. And I believe what we can do is package up this kind of, we're building this small ecosystem of collaboration companies working together, this, and create a package which on the outside looks normal to the existing investment structures. Except I know that these companies, the founders will be supported, they will not be burning out, they'll not go nuts. So I have a lower risk profile.
Absolutely. So we started looking at that in 2012 with one of
You're such a show off. Anything I say, you're like, yeah,
no.
10 years ago.
Apologies. If anything, to me is actually a bad sign in the sense that, time is flying and I still find myself like, and I'm sure, I mean, you have been in a way in the industry for like 30 years now. So you might have came across this concept like in the 90s, ecosystem building, for example, for innovation. And then, we are still here in 2025 talking about it, and we don't have something that is concrete. And so we started looking at it with Malcolm Ross, one of my dear mentors and advisor of what we're doing, and he was part of he was advising the funding team of Vodafone, Orange. It was in the early days of Microsoft and Nokia, and he founded a venture builder, what we now call a venture builder. I think it was 1999 or 2000, and it went burst. It went burst after a couple of years, and they learned a lot. But then we were looking at it in 2012, precisely to build ecosystems, so not just venture builders. And that's so we wrote dozens of pages. We ran over 2 years. Many mastermind groups with CEOs from all different companies, very large and complex companies and early stage entrepreneurs all in one room, spending 8-10 hours a day per weekend in mapping all these things out. So really, really deep work. And we synthesized about 20 to 22 main components of failures in startups. So why do they fail? And then we went down and mitigate all of them through the ecosystem approach. So, for example, the team going burnout. That's a thing. There are startups that go bananas
Oh, I
because,
mean, I think it's well
oh yeah,
recognized by
by
in
the
the
yeah,
very mainstream world that funder burnout is
yeah,
a key risk factor.
absolutely. Then you have the team running out of resources. Then you have not enough market research. Now, many entrepreneurs says, "Yeah, here is an idea and it's gonna go well." I say, "Why?" Well, I love it. I need it. And you're like, yeah, but you're not necessarily the market, the entire demographic. Um, and so if you have an ecosystem where you have members of the ecosystem, whether we call it stakeholders, users, how we were you calling it yesterday? Um, Not the audience, but the ecosystem. Well, you were calling it the
Ecosystem. I
ecosystem.
was suggesting ecosystem. I
Yeah,
mean, there's the word stakeholders, but it is just kind of
yeah.
somehow stiff.
Yeah, in a way, exactly, because we are all in an ecosystem. We are all users, but also leaders, but also followers, but also components. It just depends on which company, which organization, which role do you have at the moment. And that one already is massive because let's say you have an ecosystem that has 2 million people within the ecosystem. You already have a market. So the question is, can you talk with them first and say, "Hey guys, is this something that we need? And if yes, do we need it now? And if yes, how much are we willing to pay individually for this problem to be solved?" This one alone is massive. We know so many entrepreneurs that, of course, are skipping this part or they're just guessing it. And then we see these projections of total addressable market, 8 billion people, and you're like, "Ah, yeah, how can I talk about where do we start?" But anyway, to your point, if you can package it in a way, and then from the outside we look the same, but from the inside you will build something that is massively more successful statistically. You will not have the 1 out of 100. Sometimes they say 1 out of 10. No, I mean it's actually worse than that. Sometimes it's 1 out of 1,000. It depends if you're looking on pre-seed, seed, Series A, but the failure rate is massive. So you could definitely go from something that is today to probably 5x or 10x less risky. And less risk means more resources. And more resources means an ecosystem that is thriving. And we have been talking with corporations like Google, for example, Google Venture about this in 2013, 2014. And in a way, they have their own ecosystem. They are the ecosystem. So for them, it didn't make sense to collaborate with others in a way to make it. And then we spoke with governments, sovereign funds from Asia to the Middle East. But then we see, of course, that governments have their own challenges. Is Their structure is still very in a pyramid sense, um, and not necessarily ecosystem structured. So there are challenges there, and of course, the competence and capacities, etc. And the market as well, because for example, the Middle East, the market is not that big or not that reachable and addressable like it could be in the US, for example, or places where there is one language and everyone is online and etc. etc. So absolutely, I think who is gonna crack in a way the infrastructure?
So I wanted to connect with this. The older you get, the more frustrated you are because you see certain ideas, and yeah,
Yes.
this collaboration around collaboration technology. I remember having this conversation 8 years ago, but we are in the land of Da Vinci,
Yeah.
and look at his notebook. Some of those ideas had to wait 300-400 years before they were built. So
Yeah.
this is the curse of being a visionary. People think that it's really great to be a visionary, but it's all of those ideas that yeah are chasing you and that you're obsessed. And
Yeah,
It needs to be a certain constellation of technology, circumstances, and so on and so forth that makes something possible. Going back to where we kind of started this conversation, this is why I believe to do this ecosystemic or entrepreneurial ecosystem and create things as an ecosystem, it does require the technology because dynamically coordinating as well as dynamically distributing equity or
yeah,
other forms of value flows, also recognizing multidimensional value flows is key. But I believe it also really requires the mindset, the shared purpose. Because, I mean, let's be honest, if our only motivation is money, right? If we're doing this just to make more money, then yeah, I'll just kind of grind through and compete. But if we have a shared purpose, right? If we see that both you and I, we're really just doing the one project, right? We're trying to get humanity to not destroy itself and to create a better future for as many people as possible in all of this, that I think that creates a much more
absolutely.
richer foundation for us to then, yeah, let's find ways that we can work together more creatively.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the power and the bonding of purpose, alignment, vision, and mission. And that's one of the things that when we look deeper at burnout, is not necessarily the amount of stress, it's the fact that you're losing purpose and hope in what you're doing. And that's so much easier to tackle burnout. But if you have hope, if you believe that what you're doing is extremely important, your level of resiliency goes is much higher. So, and of course, it's underestimated in the current framework, the importance of all these aspects, or the consciousness as well of the people around you. That's another thing that we have noticed not being mapped today. So, as we were saying, there are a number of meta mapping groups and organizations that try to map who is doing what and where, but how conscious they are. Because if you're going to have people in the team that are operating from a level of consciousness that is uh, survival first, is all about me, is all about the ego, the individualism, and so on. And then you have people that are totally the opposite, like their ego it got dissolved by decades, basically, of working with people and leveling up their consciousness, which, as we know, is a journey of embodiment. In a way, it takes time. Well, then that might create friction. But if you get together people that resonate at the same level of consciousness, then even if there is one outlier, it's still manageable in a way. But the,
Yeah.
creating this level of coherence.
And that connects with me with this doing things regeneratively is inner at team level organization. That's why fundamentally I don't believe you can create a regenerative organization just doing solar stuff. You also need to be doing inner development and team
Yeah.
development and all of this. Uh, Interestingly, I think you we need to take a break, but uh, I actually disagree with you on one thing there. Having everybody at the same level is idealistic, and actually, I don't think it's necessary. It's not what had happened. For me, what's important is that everybody is on a journey and on it has an intention of learning because no matter where people are like you'll annoy each other or you'll
Mm,
do stuff whatever, but if there's an openness,
yeah.
right? And I'm always, if I ever say something and I'm being out of line or I'm not being my best self, the biggest and the best thing you can do for me is tell me, right? I'm open. I'm like, wow, thank you for
Radical
telling me.
transparency. Yeah.
How can I be better? I
Yeah.
feel gratitude, right? I really I realized at some point later in life that your true friends are the ones which will kick your ass when you need it. Your real friend
Well said.
is the one who you will go to you and say, you know what, you're not being your best self. I know you. You can do better than that. I'm calling you out. Bullshit.
Radical transparent. Well, I'll be happy to really dive into this topic as well because it's one I think of the essential topics of collaboration and getting together. And yeah, definitely have something to add on what you were saying. And no, it's uh, and I agree with a lot of it as well.
I would propose, uh, and I love the big, deep, systemic conversations, but I'm always worried about becoming too ungrounded and losing our balloon, losing the string, and us floating off into the stratosphere of big ideas and amazing futures. And it's actually, in many ways, my biggest fear in all of this is to become one of those visionaries that comes up with amazing ideas, none of which are realized in his life. So I'd really like in this continuing conversation to bring us back and actually maybe make this a bit of an experimental, build in public slash figuring out what we can do together on the record.
Amazing, I'm into as well. And yeah, and I agree with you. Is not easy to convey messages as well if there is too much, in a way, broadness, and you're talking about like the 30,000 feet view. And then of course people will say, okay, but what do we do concretely? What do we do next? But on the other side, of course, it's also it's easy to fall into hyper simplification because you simplify things too much. You're not giving a broader overview of the why you're doing it, and not just the what and the how. But we can play both. We can,
Yeah, I think the answer is to have the right amount of the big picture, but always finish with, and thus tomorrow we will.
we do this. Yeah,
Right. So in this section, let's look at the, and thus tomorrow and over the coming months we will. This is why actually I came here, because I wanted to meet you to share these ideas, but also very much to discover and eke out some
yeah,
promises of collaboration, the gathering of tribes mantra of connect for action. So a key thing that we discussed, and I think that we are agreed on, we need to bring funding
yeah,
into this ecosystem. And to me, this means it doesn't mean getting funding for your project or this particular project, but just create a general flow. So there is a flow of funding towards projects working on
yeah,
these ideas.
yeah, and absolutely. And by being part of more than 70 networks that we have been cooperating with for the infrastructure, collective intelligence, as well being members, like paying members of some of the large ones, like for example, Tonic. Then there is the Coalition for Impact. We work with Catapult. Um, there was Ida from Catapult just last week here. We are realizing, of course, that the majority of capital goes on specific projects, companies, technologies, public equity, but doesn't necessarily flow into the ecosystem, into the field building. And also because the investment terms are different. It's easier if you're investing in one company, you get shares of the company, specific projections, etc. But what does it mean investing into an ecosystem? Do you invest in multiple companies, or do you invest into a fund or into an SPV, and then the SPVs invest into the different companies? It adds an overlay, a layer more of action, perhaps even complexity, but also in terms of returns. They're not necessarily as fast as if you're investing in a company that is already generating revenues. Because if you're investing into an ecosystem, well, there is a time of adoption, alignment, learning, onboarding onto the ecosystem, adjustments. And before you have the revenues, of course, it takes a little bit longer. That's why the concept of patient capital also comes into the picture. So not every investor is ideal for this. For this type of investment, at the beginning, you need people that can understand the systemic change implications of investing into infrastructure, people that are in a way blended between impact investing and philanthropy, where they say, okay, even if I don't get my returns in 2 years, I'm fine. Even if I get it in 5 years, I'm happy. And if I don't get returns and I get my money back entirely, I'm still happy as well. Um, and of course, there are number of investors.
Yes. And then as you were speaking, I realized that we have a double problem. It's almost like the marketplace challenge because many businesses and many entrepreneurs and many projects are not ready to work ecosystemically
Yeah.
because for various reasons, either this whole
Yeah.
consciousness mindset level or yeah, or just lack of interest.
And about that, and to the connection to the point we were making about consciousness levels earlier, um, on the telodiversity side, and to be very concrete, we have imbued that already in the algorithms running the platforms, and it's going to be on the alpha as well. We have on the alpha of the Hive Mind, we have identified about 800 parameters on telodiversity. And with these different parameters, you can create indexes. And two indexes that are key here to measure are the behavioral shift readiness index. So how ready is a person or organization to shift a little bit or shift dramatically? And the collaboration readiness index. Are they ready to collaborate? Because if they aren't, is to what you're saying. I mean, then even if you build an ecosystem, it's not gonna work that well. So how many organizations fall into the collaboration readiness? And of course, at the beginning, it's not gonna be a perfect metrics, but having it helps you to then go and adjust it and improve it and look at things from different dimensions. But to your point,
Yeah, yeah. So maybe I'll lay out my vision of what I think we can do over the next, let's say, 6 to 18 months, and you can give me feedback on what you think of the idea. So to me, and I think we've, in a way, we've already started collaborating
yeah,
and having these conversations. And I think bringing more and more people into this conversation, into this idea space
yeah,
to build out the idea space, this intersection of Web3, AI, regenerative mindset, consciousness, and those three things coming together, what does it mean? Because certainly I don't claim to be an expert in any of those three, but I have a strong sensing that it's the intersection of the three of them that the real paradigm, whole societal paradigm shift will happen. So bringing in more thinkers and definitely more entrepreneurs. I, as my background is in tech, and where I can certainly have a deep degree of understanding because having been a software developer, I understand the whole stack and I can have conversations at all of the levels, from the tech through the product to the fundraising. So I see bringing together tech companies working on technology at the intersection of these three ideas into a narrative to bring more and more of creating a shared narrative, a shared story that we all say that we believe in. And on that basis, through the dialogue, building trust and building relationships to emerge a group of product organizations that are ready and willing to really come and work closer together. This idea of a venture family to create something, the whole investable ecosystem that's big, but can we bring together 5, 10, probably not more than a dozen companies that are working on concrete, real products, which we believe will be important and instrumental in bringing forth this future and create a portfolio
yeah,
that's investable. So this is my idea, is that through dialogue and I see the dialogue being at three levels. The story, the narrative, which also includes the business models and the story and the narrative that we bring to investors, the product, creating a interconnection between the different companies so they all play together, that there isn't
yeah,
duplication, rather that they support each other, and the things that they're building on can be used together. They don't have to, it's not one product, but they are
yeah,
compatible. And then a conversation at the technological level through APIs, sharing different technologies, tech stacks, and so on and so forth. So I see dialogue at these three levels, and through this, driving it, and hopefully, ideally, in the first few months, we can find some way to get some small funding to pay for the facilitation, for the production of the media,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. I really see, whether it's 5, 10, 20,000.
Well, maybe already from the audience, if someone wants to donate or support and have access to the medias even earlier on before they are released, and the raw material, maybe we would need, would be good to have a link set up, either a
Yeah,
Patreon or
yeah.
whatever it is. And then to your point, of course, investing in the frameworks, in the protocols, because we have been looking at decentralized coordination for a number of years. So how can you move as a mycelium network, as an organism, which in a way is decentralized, but having an overlay of coordination. And in that sense, protocols are key. So if you have clear engagement protocols, then every company that joins the ecosystem knows already how to play, where to connect. It's like in software, if you have the API set up ready, then people know, okay, this is how I plug in. And then, of course, you also need SDK in a way, so software development kit, where you say, okay, if I want to be part of the ecosystem, these are the where I can plug, how I can play, where I can put myself. Um, and yeah, we see that part as essential. And there are a number of organizations that are working on collaboration protocols. We have seen a number of them, but most of them are developing protocols to try to fit in the current system. So when we talk about large cooperatives, network states, bioregionalism, you're talking about different structures in a way. So the protocols per se are different.
And I really think we need to create protocols where the atoms are flexible enough that they can really enable this Cambrian explosion of collaboration. I really believe we need to make protocols where the units, whether
Modular.
we call it a DAO or such, are small and lightweight enough that they are near free, and thus that's when a huge explosion of creativity happens. If you look
Yeah.
at DAOs now, they're big, clunky, and cumbersome. I see them as companies at the level of the East India Company or the Dutch Trading Corporation.
50s,
There's these
big
big,
things.
massive, lumbering things. And of course, that's the first level. But we need to get the complexity and the cost down to near
Oh,
nothing.
fraction, yeah. Absolutely. And you have the challenge, of course, you have two big challenges that have to be addressed. And of course, we can address and we will address it. That's part of the collaborations and the infrastructure. One is the banking part. So getting bank accounts open is becoming more and more troublesome, like, compared to when we were operating maybe 15, 20 years ago in finance. You could set up a bank account, even offshore bank account, relatively quickly. Now you have layers of KYC, AML, which is fine, but you also have to pay. I don't know that if many people know, but you need to pay to open a bank account, and especially offshore where it would fit with certain types of DAOs. Because in many countries, in most Western countries, you have limitations on the number of shareholders that you can have in private limited. It's 25, 49, depending on which country. I think the US is 499, then you need to go public. In Italy is 49, then you need to go public. And of course, part of creating frameworks is developing legal frameworks that can operate in the current setups. Um, but also, of course, finding solutions to accelerate the process of opening bank accounts. Because one of the challenges with crypto that we've seen is that you add an overlay of complexity, another layer, if everything has to go through crypto and you cannot spend directly into fiat. And even in opening, I don't even know which, and maybe here the who is listening can tell us as well, if there is any centralized exchange in the crypto space that opens corporate bank accounts. Because I know Binance, Crypto.com, they open it to individuals. I don't know if you as a company can have it.
I think it's challenging, and this is also why I think the whole space of collaboration, which doesn't require that,
Yeah,
is really there is a huge opportunity there. Yes, there's maybe less money to be made at the start, but there's a whole space of collaborations, casual collaborations. You know, for most collaborations, if you and me are collaborating to go on a vacation, a splitwise
yeah,
style banking, right,
yeah,
where the money resides in your or my bank account,
yeah,
but we have effectively splitwise is a virtual shared
yeah,
bank account, but it doesn't bother anybody's KYC because the money
yeah,
is always in the name of one person. But because we have the trust between each other,
yeah.
you know, it's as good as being in a bank account. So those kinds of solutions, there is all of the solutions for smaller collaborations. And again, I think there is lots of opportunities that open up when we look at trustful collaborations. Crypto has been really focused on the space of trustless
Yeah,
collaboration,
which is not,
which is
yeah,
it's important, but it's a small
yeah,
minority of most of our
yeah,
interactions and things. When you look at trustful collaborations up to a certain amount, right?
yeah,
It's very easy, and that covers a huge space. And once we create the technology and it becomes easy, you know, when the kids creating, one of my dreams is to create an app that's easy enough to work with a blockchain based organization now for the kids making the lemonade stand,
yeah, uh,
right? I really, my dream is, can we create something that's easy and fun enough for the kids, the proverbial lemonade stand,
yeah,
and makes it easier for them, and yet still will be with them when they create their t-shirt business, and then their, I don't know, lawn mowing business,
yeah,
and then their PC consulting business, and then their first startup,
yeah,
and that can scale with them along that way. But let's start with the lemonade stand, right?
yeah.
That's already billions of collaborations. Also, I think this is needs to be a really key part in the work that we do, is a deep focus on usability.
Yeah.
And actually, I want joy. I don't want ease of use. I want joy. I want it to be fun, right? And why is this such a challenge? If we look at the space of software that's made out there, I think games should be the inspiration. Games manage to take people through very complex behaviors and activities in a way which is enjoyable and keeps people coming back. Why should the software we use to support collaboration be any less fun?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic. I think the dream of many people in this space is the gamification as well of activities. Um, yeah, and back to the other challenge, by the way, to address on the DAO side, aside the usability, which is another key point, in a way the sterile interface that we inherited by the SaaS Mac models, in a way, making it all white, making it all really sterile. Um,
And that's why, again, you know, I think the inspiration should be games. We should
yeah,
be, for the kind of software that we create, we shouldn't be looking at the inspiration to corporate collaboration tools. We should be looking at inspiration to games.
yeah, I would say in that sense, the Web3 space is a bit more dynamic. Like if you look at the DEX, for example, something like Uniswap, PancakeSwap, SushiSwap. I mean, there is more funkiness, more fun there as well. Nevertheless, they are moving billions of dollars, so it's not that they're just niche little things. And then the other challenge that I see also in DEX and DAOs and pretty much anything out there is the governance model. And that's the clunkiness as well of these large mechanisms, that they're based on consensus rather than based on influence and knowledge and insights from all the people. And consensus it forces everyone to be on the same page in terms of knowledge, understanding, comprehension. If they're not, well, then the decisions are not going to be as accurate as the model is designed to. So moving from that into what we are calling temporarily neurogovernance is moving into a space where everyone can come with their own deep domain expertise and contributing with that. So rather than having to be superficial and say, okay, I need a little bit to know a little bit of everything, I really have my domain expertise, and that's what I'm bringing. And then, of course, you need processes, protocols to make sense of all of these, to piece all the different pieces of knowledge and insights and make uh, action and adaptability. And that is similar to how a brain will work or how mycelium network works, which is through insights and real-time adaptation. Basically, it's not that the mycelium learns and then makes a board meeting and say, okay, what do we move now? And it's all in real time. And I think we can solve all of these. I think 2025 is going to be an open open lab in a way with all these different collaboration organizations to say, okay, can we develop models that are more effective, more joyful as well, more harmonious, more fun to utilize, and then, of course, can we see resources flowing in into this? If if we crack this, I think is massive.
Yes, and it's interesting because I think again I'm holding, and I find the challenge that I'm holding and I find much more problematic is different than the one that you are focused on, which is cool, because I am really thinking about everything that happens after the decision. How do we encode the decision in such a way that people understand it,
Yep.
right? With natural language, it's the number of emails and the number of times it's so easy. We think we agree, we think we've made an agreement. And I have
Yeah.
friends that have spent years in court because then they discovered years down the line that
Yeah.
actually they were not in alignment, and what they
Yeah.
had, what they thought they had agreed on with their business partners was not the thing. And
Yeah. Of course, and that
so
often.
there is that. And then how do we follow up and actually execute it?
Yeah.
How do we onboard when we have a team, people come and go? How do we onboard them onto the body of
Yeah.
agreements that have been made?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So, actually, for me, what I am really interested in is how do we create collaboration systems, digital systems? And that's where I think AIs will become
Oh
really
yeah.
important, that put into life the decisions that
Yeah.
have been made.
Yeah. And there are three topics in a way that open up to this point in my mind. One is the concept of semantic interoperability, especially in environments where you're using multiple languages and then you're conveying in English. Well, even the way you intend one concept in a native language, well, it might be slightly different into another. And if you're having three languages or
You
five
don't even in
languages,
multiple
yeah,
languages,
yeah,
even in
yeah.
one
Even in
language,
English,
people,
yeah,
even
yeah,
in
absolutely,
whatever one
yeah, yeah,
language, people
yeah, yeah, yeah,
say one
exactly,
thing, they remember another, they
yeah,
mean
yeah,
something else.
absolutely.
It's
So that's one point. The other point that Yannick suggested is actually creating with AI a large document in a way that summarizes all the decision of the current state of the organization. It's like a live document, which basically the AI brings all the new knowledge, new decisions, and keep it as an ongoing manifesto in a way where everyone can see, okay, where are we at? What are we following, what is our north star. And because organization moves over time, sometimes very rapidly, this document is constantly updated, differently from the standard model where we have one manifest at the beginning, and then of course after 2 3 years the company is already somewhere else. At least in this way you have it transparently for the internal people and then for the external uh, as well.
I again, I am on the implementation onboarding, and when you tell me that there is a document which is constantly changing, I'm like, I have this nightmare of
Yeah,
like, oh, I woke up. This is the company I thought I was working for. And it's like, I woke up, there's a different document. Oh
yeah,
shit, we're
yeah, yeah.
actually an oil and tobacco company. Where did that happen?
Yeah, and think as an ecosystem as well.
So, and but I think the answer there is, first of all, a key thing that I've come to learn working with organizations, keeping those the purpose, keeping it updated is good, but keeping it alive
Yeah.
in the day-to-day decisions is what's really hard. You need rituals around it. You need cycles
Principles.
around updating things. And where I imagine and where I hope the AI will come in helping to train people and helping to bring it into decisions and remembering everything,
Yeah.
and not just the kind of passive AI that's like a much better Google, but the AI that's actually an active agent and an active participant and team member.
Yeah, and in maintaining coherency, because in a way you don't need to read the document on a daily basis. If you have trained an agent that represents you in the organization, then the agent will tell you, "Hey, Victor, there's something here that is not aligned with what we believe. You know, you are coherent or looking at." And of course, the other advantage of that of agents is that they can consolidate principles and values. The document might change over time, strategies and tactics, but if the values are there and they're undeniable, then and they're not changing or not changing so easy, so quickly, then the AI could help also double checking long-term decisions and say, hey, we are doing something today that will go against our values tomorrow. And this happens all the time with large companies where their mission statement is one thing, and then the reality of action is completely different. There is incoherence and inconsistency. And all of these, of course, creates friction. Friction at any level, stakeholder level, shareholder level, consumers level, company, team members, because what you say and what you do becomes start to be very different. And yeah, I think all of these can be improved and again can be tested out
And
rapidly.
that's what I mean about keeping the mission alive,
Yeah.
right? And that's where I think for me it connects in we need to find ways to encode these agreements. And that's where the blockchain and crypto comes in, and agreements which are structured as code and thus uh, much less or not ambiguous, and also understandable by the AI, right? In order for the AI to become a team player and part of the team, we need to present our ideas and the knowledge in such a way that it can understand it. And yes, language models have become very good, but it's still it's a that it's not real understanding.
Yeah, no, as we know exactly, is a repetition and LLMs basically. Yeah, we know the limitations, but of course we are seeing that also the technological advancement of AI in a way is so rapid that maybe some of the things we're talking about today are gonna be solved 1 year from now or 2 years from now. I don't even know what's going on the blockchain AI integration. Like, are there large language models that are operating somehow by leveraging on the ledgers of blockchain? Maybe again, here's where the audience can say something.
Yes, and I think, I mean, how are decisions encoded now, right? Decisions are encoded as natural language, and you just have a vote yes, no. So still,
Yeah,
the semantics of the decision are encoded in natural language, not in digital code. So there's always ambiguity and meaning and all of those things. Uh, which is where I think moving to digitally encoded
mm,
decisions and ideas combined with the AI will enable the AI to become a much more intelligent player in our collaborations. So yeah, I mean, I think for me, in many ways, the key idea I think that I see us touching upon here is we're just at the beginning. People think that we're so far ahead in the deployment of technology and so on and so forth, but I really think it's very, very early days.
Yeah,
In-
especially shifting from like some people are calling it. I think we are talking about it with this in Dubai last year with Mark Buckley about moving from Anthropocene to Symbiocene. So we have been growing up in thousands of years of culture around competition in a way on the cities side, maybe in the countryside was still very reciprocal. Um, but then how can we develop collaboration protocols and how can we operate as one? So the concept of oneness. And as you say, we are still very early days. We are seeing it at the governance level, infrastructure level. Everything has to be designed. And then to the point of what you were saying, when people get into the ecosystem, how easily and quick will be the alignment period with the protocols, with the guidelines. And of course, depending on the culture, that can be a long time or can be very quick, but still is a process on its own, the alignment. But to dive even deeper into what you were saying, like, okay, what's next? What's tomorrow? What's next week? Yesterday night, we were discussing about starting to operate, of course, as an ecosystem. So, starting to create an inviting different organization, probably 5 or 10 organization per circle in a way, or department, how we want to call it, which, if I recall correctly, of course, we have all the notes. If I recall correctly, was
Just for context, when you were saying last night, this was the conversation you were having with whom?
you and
Oh,
I,
our
yeah, yeah,
conversation.
yeah, yeah,
Right,
no,
right, right.
yeah, last night. And one department was the finance, so having a group of organization that focuses on raising the capital, building the vehicles, building the frameworks, talking with the different shareholders types, so philanthropists, impact investors, and so on. Then the other department was ecosystem building. So the infrastructures, the protocols, the tools, the platforms. Then the other department was the products. So what this ecosystem is providing, how it generates revenues. Because unfortunately, as we know, we are currently in a capitalistic society. So you still have to generate revenues in a way to support the ecosystem. People need to have salaries in the current uh, societal framework. Otherwise, they cannot pay rental, they cannot pay for food until, of course, you reach a level of parallel economy. But it will not be immediate. You need to have transition mechanism, transition engines.
And maybe actually, I think the answer is that we will always keep the existing money for some things because for certain things it's actually useful. So, but yeah, I definitely believe that being regeneratively successful means being sustainable in the current financial economy whilst generating value in many other dimensions.
Yeah. And then we were saying, of course, the other department would be the sales part. So, do you have a group of organization that is very good at getting in touch with the audiences, with stakeholders, and then the ecosystem itself? And then I think another key department that we were talking about, or circle, or how we want to call it, was and is the media part. So the importance of narratives, and this is resonating with so many organizations. In a way, having infrastructure where we can become easier for everyone to communicate what they're doing, how they're doing it, having direct connection with the audience instead of each of them having to use Instagram or Facebook on their own. Also, because we know that most of all these social networks, they want you to pay to reach an audience. It's not anymore like the early days where you just had a good idea, you were sharing it, and then the algorithm would blast it to many people. Now, reaching a few million followers is more complex without resources. Of course, if you have resources, it's easier because you can buy collaboration, you can buy partnerships, etc. But if you don't, then it's going to be much harder than compared to what it was before. And so, in a way, this is also a very practical element for other organizations and people that are listening to say, okay, maybe I can fall or I can support on one of these arms and departments of the ecosystem. And of course, there is more. There will always be more. Ecosystems are homeostatic by design. It's not a static balance. It's always adapting. It's always dynamic. And it has to be, and that's why protocols are going to be key as well, so that everyone brings something and the ecosystem grows and thrives.
Yeah, so for me, it's clear that the low-hanging fruit that we start with, which we've already started here, is sharing, creating a way of sharing media.
Yeah.
So even just if every project on a regular basis interviewed one other project and shared it, right, we would get the voice out there much more. And I think we can do this within our capacity to start over the coming months and really look towards creating some funding, maybe pulling funds and maybe getting from Gitcoin, getting some investors, right, to create this uh, meta media organization, right? There'll be a degree of tutoring and teaching different projects how to get their voice out there, interviewing them, everybody interviewing everybody else, right? It's not just one thing. And I don't think for a while I was like, could we create device TV of regeneration? How cool would that be? But that's not the forward looking way, right?
Yeah,
We
it's
need
more
to
decentralized.
it's more decentralized. It's not about creating one narrative.
Yeah.
It's about creating, showing how all of these different things are part of a bigger meta
Yeah.
narrative.
And that's the beauty of what we're doing. I've always thought, like, how can you create a culture and not a cult? Because it's easy to fall into the mistake of saying, okay, now we create one narrative, people will learn about the narrative. And in a way, the impact space, it sounds almost like a cult because there are these echo chambers where now everyone uses the same terminology, even without understanding the implications of those terminologies, and you cannot question anymore. You cannot question, say, but guys, are we really doing the right thing here? Because now the echo chamber is formed. The beauty in what we are doing is that liberation of thinking comes from multiple perspectives. We don't need to give one perspective. The fact that you're giving hundreds of perspectives is liberating because then people can go and make their own sense of it. You don't need to give them also the meaning of it. Say, okay, this is what it is. These are all the perspectives. Make your own mind um, with your own critical thinking, which is beautiful.
And yeah, you mentioned when we were talking in the last few days that you had 700 calls last year. I think I probably
Yeah.
had maybe around 300. And it was incredible because it was so inspiring. And after a while, you just start seeing that there is this underlying sense of everybody's trying to do the same thing. And I
Yeah.
talked to both people that have been doing this stuff for 40 years or more, right? Like real veterans of the
Hardcore.
ecological
Yeah.
systems change movement, and quite young people that are in their mid years of university and trying to figure out what the hell is this
Yeah.
world? Where am I going? And yet, somehow, underlying those conversations, there was the same ethos, the same sense of I sense that we can do better, and I want to be part of the solution in the movement.
Yeah. Yeah. I think. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So and after having, those those 100, 200, 300 very diverse conversations of people working on very different things, some very technical solutions, some just trying to figure it out. After a while, we started joking with Audrey, my co-founder, it's just the one project.
Yeah.
We're all
Yeah.
working
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
one project.
Yeah.
And not in some
Yeah.
kind of reductionist, but in that non-dual, it's all one kind of way. And that's what I hope that we can create with this meta movement, to give people the sense that there is so many different things that people are doing, which might appear completely different, and yet underlying it is, yeah, this the sense of it's the one big project.
Absolutely. And I mean, we are all one. We just don't realize it. Not everyone has realized it yet. And everything that we're doing is interconnected. There is a complexity, interconnectedness in everything that we do. And not to go too philosophical on this, but we were working on the concept of consciousness, like how can we elevate consciousness into complex systems. And one of the things that we figured out is that consciousness leads to syntropy, so to getting things connected, to stronger bondings, to build relationship and bridges, and the other way around. So the lack of consciousness tends to lean towards entropy, so to the dissolution of bonds, to the breaking of relationship, to the isolation of moving from nodes to simple particles. So with what we are doing, in a way, we are all realizing we are one. And we are seeing there are so many overlaps that you say, okay, it doesn't make sense to have all these labels and brands and names, and people saying, no, this has to have my name on it or my brand on it. No, and number of organizations that are working with us are, we are simply saying, okay, we are blending. You know, it's not your team, my team, it's our team. We are working on the same thing, whether we call it the thing or not. But yeah,
Yeah. So going back to the very practical, this meta narrative, start doing it, then start figuring out how to finance it. And then also, what I think is really important is as we create and spin this, build this narrative into the world, we really need to keep in mind and have a boot up first the narrative and then the action towards creating investable vehicles,
yeah.
right? I That's, for me, it's the narrative first, and then once we have the coherent strong narrative and can point, all of these people are talking about this, and here's how you invest
Yeah.
into it.
And I think this will be extremely powerful also in terms of community based investment, in the sense that, of course, what we see that we need, I think, especially the past few months in terms of on the US side when it comes to healthcare companies, insurance companies, and so on, we see that communities right now need better infrastructure, better companies that care for them. So these would be ideal investments for the communities to build their own companies, new insurance companies, new banking companies that are owned by the community and serve the community, and not just one community from one country, but structures that goes beyond the countries, and that's where bioregionalism or network states make sense. But, whether we call it DAOs or whatever it's called, these would be ideal investments because people could say, I need insurance anyway. I might as well pay something that is not screwing me over and that is not for speculation, something that serves me. Um, and by investing into it, I'm investing in my future. And there's so many industries that needs to be redesigned. And we are seeing in a way how late stage capitalism is going on the opposite direction, is exploiting people, is sucking resources out of it. Greedflation, record profits. And you look at the Gini index and the wealth inequality is skyrocketing, is increasing, of course. And on that side, there is no counter movement happening. But this could be one of the current counter movements.
Yes. And at the same time, I wonder of what the timing and the ordering of these investments
Uh,
realistically can be.
yeah.
Because when you say a healthcare insurance company that's a multi, to be resilient, it's probably multi-100 million to
Yeah,
multi-billion
yeah.
business. You need tens or hundreds of thousands of people to be participating for it to be a viable business. And at that point, it must be quite mainstream and quite
Yeah,
worked
yeah.
out.
You need
Given the level of sophistication we are, the tools that you're building, the tools that our friends are building, I think the first wave is we need the visionary high net worth individuals, family offices that really want to build a legacy, that want to be part of creating new a new paradigm for society. We need them to fund the initial tools
Yeah,
and the capability in the system before it's capable of rolling out into a
absolutely.
much wider mass
Yeah, yeah.
adoption.
And back to what we were talking about it in the past few days, why media is so important, because with media you align with the community, with the ecosystem, and I think if you start to have hundreds of thousands of people watching, listening, being part of these conversations, then getting the critical mass to kick off certain infrastructure or pieces like the insurance and so on is going to be much easier compared to what is today, that maybe getting those 100,000 people will get you 2 3 years of work and investment. um, and so yeah, absolutely. Is all on to what you were saying, identifying the leverage points that are essential today, and then of course every quarter, every year. Yeah,
And building really the step by step
yeah,
map, the step by step funding map until we can get to creating the funds or the portfolios that are in the tens and the hundreds of millions. And that's why I'm really excited in diving deep and intertwining with the Web3
yeah.
crypto world, because that's the only space in the current business investment marketplace where I see appetite, interest, and openness to funding radically new collaboration, organization, structure type technology.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we come more from the philanthropic experience, impact investors and philanthropic experience, but I see too much of an echo chamber there for people to go outside and say, okay, instead of investing in a trust or in a foundation, I'm going to invest into infrastructure for decentralized coordination. While if you talk about decentralization, well, of course, the blockchain space is more um, reactive to that.
That's why we need all of
Yeah,
those three pieces, because each one
yeah,
is an echo chamber.
yeah, yeah,
Web3
yeah, yeah.
crypto is its own echo chamber.
Philanthropic,
Philanthropy is
ESG, and
its
so
own
on.
echo
Yeah,
chamber. AI is just coming up.
yeah,
We need to get the visionary people in all of those three spaces to
yeah,
come together and see that it's only at the intersection of those
yeah. And
that the
another
next will come.
Another thing that perhaps we could add in terms of the revenue part is the role of memberships and fellowships. In the sense that, if we look at Netflix, Netflix is generating a cash flow of, if I'm not wrong, around $2 billion per month. $2 billion per month by having a $14 per month subscription, basically. That is true, it keeps people entertained and engaged, but is exploiting coping mechanisms of escapism and sufferance and lack of belonging and solitude.
Are
So
you criticizing my Netflix viewing habit? I've had some. I can't be viewing really highly over intellectual content all the time. Just give me an hour a day, please.
you're gonna have the people are gonna have the G agent popping up on your screen. Are you escaping from your responsibilities right now? You still haven't finished tasks for the ecosystem. No, I'm joking. But anyway, the Netflix model, I think, is a great model to say you can, through membership, have millions, if not billions of dollars flowing into something that creates value. And engagement is part of it. I mean, as human beings, we need games, we need engagement. The question is, are you doing it in a regenerative way? Are you giving resources in an ecosystem that cares about you and doesn't want to exploit all your weakest instincts and dynamics, but doing it in a creative way, but also constructive way and not devastating. So I think membership, for example, could be another approach. But what do you think about it?
Well, I mean, I would go for even masterclass.com or Domestika,
Yeah.
one of the learning
Oh
platforms,
yeah.
as more of an inspiration, because
big thing
if
about
you're
that.
looking at the pure entertainment platforms like Netflix, right? I mean, they, as you implied, right? They don't, they, most of the time spent on Netflix is not making you a better version of yourself. It's
Mm.
just letting you avoid facing things, and it's just entertainment. So I don't know. I mean, I think we need to, and this needs to be part of our narrative and this meta conversation that we have, not just exploring the big vision of the world that could be, but really diving in step by step of
Yeah,
how do we create step by step go to that mass adoption, because that 2 billion is from, I don't know, they have
140 million.
140 million. I was
Yeah,
going to say 200. So
maybe now is more. I don't know.
yeah, so how do we go now? We have maybe a few million people in our regenerative future thinking ecosystem, but most of them, actually there's very probably thousands of people, if that, that have the mindset of what we're talking about,
Yeah,
of the new forms of organization based on technology, blockchain plus regeneration plus
yeah,
AI,
yeah. What are
right?
you giving them
So
as well?
how do we go from a few dozen to a few to thousands, to hundreds of thousands, to
Yeah,
millions? What is the path for mainstreaming?
yeah.
As my friend Jean-Marc from GeoShip likes to say, from grassroots to supernova,
I love that. Love that.
which is, but what is the path step by step? And can we lay it out with baby
Yeah,
steps and the funding steps along the way that take us there?
yeah. And also to that point as well, what are the services and the values that you're giving? Because in a way,
Exactly.
entertainment alone, like for example, we are here with the guys from GaiaNet, and of course we've been talking about blending um, our networks, our values, and looking also at all the companies that are in our ecosystem. What do they need? So there are hundreds of organizations that we know that they need help in fundraising, in marketing, in reaching out an audience, etc. And if you look at the economy of scale, you can reduce the costs of providing all these services into an ecosystem. So maybe you could have a membership, I don't know, with $199 a month that gives you access to X amount of hours of a fundraiser that goes and fundraise from a larger network rather than each company having to raise capital on their own. Um, and then the content person, and then as what you were saying earlier about teams, leveraging on existing teams of people that already work very well together, and then you borrowing it. So
Exactly.
I think all of
And
these can be
so
creative. Yeah.
this is this idea of building ecosystems, what I call regenerative ecosystems of collaboration. People have been starting to talk about uh, not collaboration ecosystems, entrepreneurial ecosystems.
Mhm. Yeah.
Or I think the path to that is we need to start smaller with deeper relationships. So
So
in my thinking, probably the first iteration of that is not going to be 1,000 organizations, it'll be a dozen or maybe 2 dozen, but on that order, right? Where this is why I came here to
yeah,
build this trust. And now we have a much higher level of trust than we did after the first three calls. And we can start doing something. And I know a bunch of other organizations, a bunch of others. So let's start that model and show how that model can work with a smaller but a group. Let's leverage and use the trust that both you and I have built over the years of networking, pull in a bunch of right people where it's going to be already, we know there's a good degree of value
yeah,
and thinking alignment, and we can just go,
yeah.
and then on that model create. And I think we don't really know what this structure will be going forward, because this
And
will
it's good
be
that we don't know because it means that we are
maybe
keeping
this
it
will be,
open.
that's why I'm talking about venture families.
Mm.
And maybe it's not going to be ecosystems of thousands of companies, with a 200 subscription. Maybe it's going to be families which are actually deeper and have a higher
Yeah.
degree of intertwinement. And then it's only the families that create the bigger structures, right? So I think we need to be open to different solutions. I think right now there's a huge amount of mass networks, thousands of followers on LinkedIn, and the DAOs with thousands of people. And those experiments they're creating lots of good, but I think they're also starting to show their limits. I am really curious to start experimenting in smaller but deep trust groups.
So if you had to give some, in a way, KPI by June 2025, how many organizations would you like to see ideally in this deep trust network? And how much, in a way, how much funds will be allocated for the infrastructure and the media to set a goal there, to manifest it?
I would say by June, so that's 5 months from now.
Yeah, four
I
and a half.
Sorry,
Four and a half
4.5. What?
is a
June,
20.
June 1st. Okay. Uh, I would say if we have 30 or 40 high quality conversations like this, and a solid deck that we can take to investors to raise the first couple hundred to 1 million.
1 million. Okay, I would say that let's put it on the 1 million side. As Machiavelli was saying, shoot higher, and then you still have the time for the arrow to go
Yeah.
down. But yeah, let's manifest it. So let's see also with the communities and the audience what comes into by June. And that would be good to have multiple sessions like these, even remotely, to say where are we at?
Yeah.
What are the KPIs?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic. So see you in the next session and stay updated with the KPIs and let us know about convergence. Anything you have in mind, anything you want to add to this conversation. We are doing this publicly. We are thinking about while we are talking to make, as you were saying, making it public, building
Build in
it,
public.
build it public. I like that. We should have it, build in public. Should be one of the quotes here.
Yeah, and I think for me, this doing it in public is very much extending the invitation. We are we're ready to do, we're ready to go. So we're searching for people who are doers. Again, as we said, the fundraising will start on June 1st. So we don't have jobs so much, but incredible opportunity to contribute, to work with amazing people. Right now, the first step, as we said, is really building this coherent narrative. So people who are in media, who want to interview, if you want to come and do a podcast and interview, we can
Yeah.
feed you the most amazing people in the world. If you want to write, if you want to do design, branding, contribute, there's a huge number of ways to contribute to help us create this narrative and take it out into the world.
What would be one guest on the podcast that you think would be ideal? Someone that could reach a bigger audience in a way.
I think definitely we have to start with Kevin Ohotsky from GitHub, Gitcoin, and Green Pill Network.
So we can call it,
And
we can
then
say,
once we get our narrative a bit further, actually, certainly we need to pull in the Illuminati of the Web3 world. I don't know how. He's a great thinker, but I don't know how good Vitalik is on interviews. I haven't seen him actually.
well, maybe we
Uh,
can ask him
but we
about the
can
concept,
pull him into the dialogue
the building public
from
concept.
the AI and AI agents world. You're much more knowledgeable in that space.
Well, I'm gonna have a call in an hour with the guys from data stacks. They're developing vector database on Lang chain. I'm thinking, yeah, good question. I don't know. I think they're not superstar yet, like on the blockchain space that you have those 100, 200 names. I think the AI has lesser names, but more difficult to reach at the moment. Certainly, I would say the guys from Mistral, so the open source AI system. I think some people from NVIDIA as well. Um, yeah,
I think I would love to get people from the investor network that are working with the impact investor network
those we can invite.
to understand better how to create the narrative which will be compelling and engaging for the investors to come in and be part of the journey. And actually, we're talking with Alexander. I really want to think about this not as come give us your money, but as come join the adventure, come become part of the narrative.
Yeah. Also, because it's not money that is going to you or to me. I mean, we are here all in the role of stewards. We are here to help channeling resources effectively to create the most
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
additionality for humanity.
me, my dream is not to become rich or anything like that, but to become part of a thriving and abundant
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and to that point, to the last note, I would say there's also the revenue part that people that can join from now until June and then beyond can also generate through an ecosystem. So even if you don't have fundraising, you can still operate well if your ecosystem has revenues, whatever that looks like, whether it's from the collective intelligence, from the services provided. So even that part can work as well. And I would say many investors will look at this element, how revenue generating the ecosystem is and how self-sustainable it is as well. Of course, I mean, there's so much to talk about it. So I'll probably say in the next session, we should do definitely one about revenue and revenue streams. Fantastic. So
Amazing. Thank you.
that's it for today, I guess.
Thank you.
Let's go and have dinner, have our group
Yes.
dinners with, yeah.
Abundance.